What's up, guys? I'm back with more F123 league racing this time. We are in Portugal, and this was the first race of the season, and we are past this at this point. We've had a few more races. I've just been working through a backlog of videos that I was trying to record commentary over, edit, all of that. And so this has happened a while back, but when we were going into this race, I had no idea what the state of the driver field would look like this season. And I actually spent a lot of time preparing for this track. Portugal is a track that I've enjoyed quite a bit every time I've raced it in league racing. I want to say this is the third or fourth time I've had a league race here, and I've always enjoyed it. I've always thought it's fun. I think it's a cool track. I think it's got good flow. I think it could be really difficult at times because there are blind corners. Like this one right here, I find very tough in cockpit view, and it's probably tough in TCAM as well. Don't get me wrong. I just think there's not a lot of visibility and it makes it a tough corner. But it's a track that I have fun with. And I decided to do quite a bit of preparation for this race. I really put a lot of time in trying to figure out what the best strategy was going to be for the race instead of just listening to the game as I do a lot of the time. And I put in a lot of laps. I did a lot of, I don't want to say data analysis, but kind of data analysis just to figure out what would be the fastest strategy. So I had done a substantial amount of laps for this race, more so than I probably usually would for a league race. In fact, a lot of these I don't really do a lot of preparation for, just because when you're racing every week, it can sometimes you don't have the time to really prepare as much as you like. If maybe there's more going on at work, or more, or you're out of town, or there's more going on in your personal life or whatever. So that's a long-winded way of saying I usually don't do a ton of preparation, but I did for this track. And I think it really paid off. I think that I am not one of the fastest drivers in this league. There's no question. I feel like in terms of pace, I am bottom half of the league. But in terms of consistency, I feel like I am very high up in the league. I'm not perfect. There are drivers in our league who have never DNF'd, which is incredible because I definitely have a lot of DNFs in my history racing in this league. But I generally am more consistent than a lot of the other people. So a lot of the time, the way that I get good results in races is by being consistent, but not necessarily being fast. So qualifying pretty low, but then not really making a lot of errors and generally moving up the field throughout the race. And that I would say I expected somewhat to continue here. But you see me coming across the line here, and I'm in P6 after my second lap. And I am going to load up here for a third lap and try to go around at the end of qualifying. But you see me just go pretty deep right there on that turn. And the lap was a bit washed at that point. And don't get me wrong, I pushed for the rest of the lap. I ended up maybe 2/10 off or something like that, which is what I was at that turn. So I think overall I was pretty consistent with the lap, but just messed that one turn up and it kind of ruined the whole lap. So I end up P7 here out of 13, which I'm pretty happy with. I think that was maybe a little higher than I would have expected to qualify. I qualified in front of a couple people that I might not have expected myself to. We get Grego behind me with a drive-through. That kind of threw me off. I don't know if you saw that in the start, but Grego took the early start behind me and got the drive-through penalty, and it did throw me off a little bit, but fortunately, I didn't mess up and copy him, which would have been less than ideal to get the drive-through right there. But we're P7 after a couple turns here, and Grego's behind me. He's one of the guys that I expected would probably qualify ahead of me, but didn't. I think he was right behind me, and he effectively is out of this race now with the drive-through. And I'm intent on not crashing with him. You see him glitching around a little bit here as we go through the first couple of laps. And that was pretty worrying to me. I said, I'm definitely going to stay away from this guy because I can't gain anything from racing him. He's got to take his drive through very shortly. But I was very intent on staying in front of the people who were behind me, like Tegrity and Turtle Commander. And Tegrity, I think, has been faster than me sometimes, slower than me other times. But Turtle Commander is typically around the same pace as me. And a lot of times is a guy that I'm racing in these races. I know a few of the races that have occurred since this race. He's been the person that I was racing the most on track. So there's no question he can stick with me, and it looks like he's on a different strategy here as well. So that could be interesting. Of course, my eyes are on Ghost 2 spots ahead of me, but we'll see if that's going to be a possibility at all. Notice here that I get a lot of speed. We don't have DRS yet, and I was able to fly by Grego. And that's something that comes up more and more in this race, okay? In talking to some others who were in this race, it is very clear that I was running lower downforce than pretty much everyone else. And I don't remember the specific wings that I was running here, but in talking to others, it was something like, I don't know, maybe let's say I want to say I was somewhere around 27 for the front wing, 30 for the back wing, and I seem to remember that the guys that were in this race, most of them were in like the 30s and up to 40 or something. So I was running much lower downforce here, which means I've got a ton more top speed on the straights. I got by Grego there, by the way, which is nice, and I think he's going to take his drive through pretty quickly here in short order. So we should be away from him, and hopefully will not be on track with him at any point for the rest of the race, just because I think his connection was a little off this race. He's also in Australia, by the way, and we're in America. Usually his connection seems to be generally fine, but I did notice him glitching around a bit in this race. But we are firmly in 6th place, and I get a bit of luck there as Ghost actually goes off track, and I'm able to get within DRS range. And with my low downforce, I was hopeful that I could do a little bit to catch him, and I do a little bit there. But I think he does run away a little bit, if I remember correctly, but we're certainly going to see in a moment. Fast forward to lap 4, it looks like Ghost and Incident have swapped places, not necessarily intentionally. I do pass my teammate Hal there. Unfortunately, Hal did that. He had that spin. I want to say he was pretty consistent otherwise throughout the race, but he had that spin, and pretty much if you spin once, you're out of contention for a podium, I would say, in this league, just because of the consistency of a lot of the drivers, or at least a few of the drivers in this league. I mean, drivers like Doug Hughes, who you can't actually see on screen because he's in first. You maybe have seen it pop up when he gets a fast lap. Incident has a moment right there in front of me. Incident is generally very consistent, so it was nice to get in close range to him here, and I'm hopeful that I can take this position off of him. I get to DRS, and just look at that overspeed. That's just absurd. The setup really, I was happy with this setup. I found that this downforce level was good for me, but there's no question I'm losing a little bit of time in the corners and then gaining a lot of time on the straights, and you kind of see that continue throughout the race. But the hope is that I can stay far enough ahead and in the corners, and then gap a little bit on the straight, just because I have lower downforce. But Incident looks like he has a bit of a moment or something there and loses a little bit of time. But we're gonna fast forward through this stint, and you can just kind of see how this goes out here. On to lap 6 and 7, and then we are, or no, not 7. We're on lap 6 here, and Incident is right behind me. Ghost, again, is just building a little bit of a lead on us, but Incident, it looks like, is going to be getting pretty close behind me. I think the point here is to show you that. Oh, yeah, that's right. So you see all the drivers at the bottom. It says Lord Tegrity has left the session. Turtle Commander 7 has left the session. All these drivers are leaving the session, and I'll give you a hint. They're not actually leaving the session. This is a dead giveaway that I've disconnected. I've desynced from all these other drivers, and this, first of all, this is the first time that this has ever happened to me. I host these races. This is my league. I host these races. Typically, I have a pretty good connection, and we have good internet, so it's generally not a problem. But here, it was very clear that everybody was disconnecting. I knew that was the problem. I got somebody to invite me back into the race pretty quickly. I want to say it was half a lap, maybe a lap, something like that. But I was out too long because I'm over 9 seconds behind Ghost. I'm over 3 seconds behind Incident. That's not what I needed. I need to be rolling on all cylinders here, because I basically lost anywhere from 3 to 5 seconds with that little disconnect. And fortunately, I don't have any more problems here for the end of the race, but we've got a lot of ground to make up if I want to catch these guys in front of me and get a good result out of this race. Fortunately, the drivers behind me, it looks like, are getting a couple track limits warnings, and I want to say Turtle probably had a spin or something of that sort, but I do get a little bit of luck there as Incident goes completely off track, and he's in the grass, so I gained a ton of time on him. I'm over 3.5 seconds in front of him right there, and we'll fast forward a bit more here, but Ghost is, I'm going to say, probably out of reach in front of me. Incident is certainly going to be my competition for the rest of this race. And going into lap 15, you can see that he's a little over 3 seconds behind me, and I'm going to pass both Thug Hughes and Sean McLeod, who are both pitting, and going on to a new set of tires. So I'm P2 on track, but it's not a true P2. And in my mind, there's no question that I'm going to get passed by Sean McLaughlin, Thug Hughes, because first of all, they're on fresher tires. Second of all, they're both faster drivers than I am, especially in this race. You'll see that they just are faster than me on track. So I didn't even fight that Sean McLaughlin move. There was just no point whatsoever. I didn't want to compromise my own line and cost myself any time or potentially lock up or something like that. Did have a bit of a moment on the exit of that corner, but fortunately was able to save it, not really lose any time. Going down the straight into lap 17, Thug is definitely catching me. Again, I'm not going to fight this. There's just nothing to be gained from me fighting this and losing time. But unfortunately for me, it actually was a little tough. I wanted to let him pass without lifting, but I just had too much speed on the straight, and so I had to compromise my entry into turn one a little bit. Is it going to make a difference? Probably not. At the end of the day, it's probably only a tenth or so that cost me, but now I'm in the dirty air too, and I do think that cost me a little bit of time there to be chasing these cars through this turn. Fortunately, we're pretty close here to going onto my second set of tires. You see us go lap 19. Incident pits ahead of me. He pits on this lap, so be looking for the undercut here, and we'll see if that happens. I'm into the pits at the end of lap 19, and I'm going on to, if I'm not mistaken, the hards, or the softs. That's right, yeah. I went for the one stop here, and put the new tires on, release, and you can see at the bottom left, Incident is coming around the last turn here, and it looks like it's going to be pretty close, and it just felt like infinity. I usually speed up the pit stops because I feel like it takes too long, but it felt like I spent an infinite amount of time in the pit lane. It just felt like I was spending minutes going through the pit lane, and I'm so focused on getting out in front of Incident. Unfortunately, I'm able to do it. He slightly undercut me with the one lap earlier pit stop, but I was able to stay ahead, and I'm hopeful that I can now use my battery and use my top speed advantage and stay ahead of this guy, but I've got to do it for the next 13, 14 laps. And I'll just be honest, Incident is probably faster than I am. We're on pretty similar tires, so there's not really a tire offset here. And it's going to be tough to fend him off for the rest of the race. I don't have much hope of catching the guys in front of me, so there's not anything forward that I'm pushing for, but I'm certainly pushing to stay ahead of the people who are behind me, especially right now in these cold tires. I'm a bit panicky. I'm worried that he's going to be able to get past me, but it looks like he had something happen there, and I don't know if that was it wasn't a full spin, but I want to say it was probably just a loss of traction. I don't think that there was any contact between the two of us, and I don't think that I did anything that was unexpected or that would have caused him to do that. I think it was just he had a moment situation. But it gives me a little bit of breathing room, and a little bit of breathing room is all I need going down the pit straight, because I'm definitely going to gain a little bit of time. You see me turn on my battery, and he's got DRS, remember, and I'm actually gaining time on him. So that should tell you pretty much everything you need to know about setup differences in this race and about the downforce levels that I was running. But that's what I'm counting on here. I'm counting on that saving me and keeping me out ahead of him. He also has a 3-second penalty for track limits violations, which is going to be very important. There's no question, because that gives me a 3-second buffer to stay a little safer. And even if I do get past, as long as I can stay within 3 seconds of him, and I'll have the benefit of DRS, or should, then I'll be able to secure P4 in this race. Because again, I don't think P3 is in question. But you saw me fast forward a bit there through the second stint. It was just a little bit of give and take. He got up to almost 2 seconds behind me, but down to half a second going into lap 27, and I've still got 6 laps left to make this work and to stay out ahead. And I will tell you, this is probably the most stressful stint that I've ever had in a league race. And I don't think that's giving away the result when I say that, because it's going to be stressful regardless. I was constantly on guard with Incident behind me, and had a bit of a moment there. I lost a little bit of time. But I'm constantly on guard with Incident behind me. He's a little bit faster than I am, which adds to the stress. And I'm really defending for my life here, and I'm using a ton of battery. You can see that I'm down to 17% battery at this point in the video, whereas when I came out of the pits for my second stint, I was on something like 77%. So I've used 60% of my battery over the last 12 laps, call it. or yeah, maybe a little bit more than that, 12 or so laps, whatever it was. And I am just holding on for dear life here. But I am able to get a little bit of breathing room going into this long pit straight. Again, roughly half a second, which is okay. I started to feel what was comfortable and what was uncomfortable in the second stint in terms of being in front of incident. And I found that if I was about half a second ahead, I felt pretty comfortable. When he started getting within zero point 0.3, zero point 0.4 seconds of me, that's when I was starting to feel pretty uncomfortable. Fortunately, Portugal is not a track that there are a lot of passing opportunities on non-DRS straights. I mean, you could certainly do it, but I think it would be dependent on the car in front of you making some sort of error or having a moment and costing themselves time. And I really wasn't doing that. I felt like this was a pretty consistent stint. And actually, in retrospect, I wish that I had looked after the race at the race director and just looked at all my laps, because I felt like I was piping in pretty similar laps throughout this stint. And are they the fast laps of the race? No, there's no question. I wasn't the fastest driver on track, but I felt, again, like I was being pretty consistent. And so for me, anytime I can do that, I can get to the end of a race, regardless of the result, and say, that race felt really good. I felt consistent. I felt like I was doing what I needed to do. I gave it my best shot, right? It gets a little different if you're making a bunch of errors and sliding off track and stuff. Those are the races that I'm disappointed by. But a race where I'm piping in really consistent laps and giving the drivers around me a good challenge is a race that I feel like I'm doing my best in, right? But back to the race at hand. He's within half a second of me now, and we're getting down to the bone. I've been able to save a little bit of battery over the past couple laps, but I don't know how long that's going to last. Again, I've got the 3-second buffer, but I need to keep him behind me for as long as possible, because what I'm afraid of will happen is incident gets by me. I am counting on staying within his DRS, but if I'm unable to stay within his DRS, I'm cooked. I mean, he'll get a big lead on me and I'll be in big trouble. And right now, it looks like it's going to be the time for him to pass me, because he's within 0.2 of a second going down the pit straight. And I am hitting all the battery. I'm going all the way down. It looks like I'm on like 7, 8%. And fortunately, I'm just able to stay ahead. So I bought myself at least one DRS zone worth of time. Let's hope that I can stay ahead of him for the next DRS zone. But that was the closest that he's been to overtaking me in this second stint. And I'm, again, just really feeling the pressure. But he maybe had a bit of a moment in the first couple corners there, because I built a little bit of a lead back up. But on to the next lap, he is right back within range. He's under 0.2 of a second. But he does have 6 seconds of time penalties now. So I'm a little bit more comfortable. And I would have taken a more defensive line, I think, if he hadn't had the 6 seconds of time penalties there. But it was really uncomfortable. I don't like to take the first turn on a defensive line. It's really not good at Portugal. So I wanted to stick with my line and hopefully stay within range of him and stay within the DRS straight here, because it would have been disastrous if I'd gone off track and cost myself time and gotten out of DRS range. But I'm able to stay within DRS range at least for that turn. And going into lap 3 here, lap 33, sorry, he is outside of DRS range, roughly 1.4 seconds. But as long as I stay within 6 seconds of him, I will be okay. I'll secure P4, and it looks like I'm going to be able to do that. This was one of, if not the most stressful stints that I've ever had in racing, in league racing. I've had stressful stints against the AI, but it just feels a little bit different against real people that you're in a server with and talk to and race with regularly. It just feels like a lot more pressure. And of course, there are no flashbacks, and there are real repercussions if you hit another car in a league race. So it was really satisfying to me, and I'm really proud of that second stint, because I do think Incident is a faster driver than me generally. And I think he was a faster driver than me on track today. And I fought through the disconnect, which probably cost me 5 seconds. And I was able to stick in front of Incident and secure the P4, which to me, I think this is one of my proudest race results. So hoping we can build on this for the rest of the season. Thanks for watching.